So we're going to do a performance that is based on my book. And my book starts with a real-life experience that I had that I'll describe in the reading, but it happened 5 years ago when I went to see the rehearsals and performance of a passion play at Angola prison. And there were actors from Angola, and then there were women actors from St. Gabriel, the women's prison in St. Gabriel, including one of the graduates who's here with us tonight, Thais, and we have now And so it seemed like an eminently good idea to do this as a partnership. So I'm going to read a little bit from the beginning of the book, and then you'll see what we do with it after that. We parked outside the arena, the facility where they hold the prison rodeo twice each year, and I began to help Deborah with some of her equipment, but I could soon tell that she didn't want my help. Those of you who know Deborah know what I'm talking about. Something about stepping outside the truck into the brightness and dust made us fretful, overly alert. It scrambled our signals, and somewhere in here I lost track of what was happening. I saw a camel standing in the dead grass outside the arena's gates, blond, tall, attended by two men in cowboy clothes who looked at me without humor. Inside the arena, beyond the brown-painted gates and fences, men in work boots and jeans were still building the stage sets. So far, 3 wooden crosses bedecked with ropes had been raised on a mound of dirt. Beyond them, amid a few ranks of potted bushes and shrubs and a fake Roman temple made of plywood, a crowd of about 70 inmates was standing around chatting. The men in street clothes, the women from St. Gabriel in jeans and light blue shirts bearing the initials of the Louisiana Correctional Institute for Women in black letters. Kathy was responding to a call on her cell phone. Deborah had disappeared beneath the grandstand where she would set up for her photographs, formal portraits of the actors before a black velvet screen. There were several animals involved in the production. The camel I'd just seen, some horses that now came charging across the arena at full speed. But the donkey, Kathy was learning now, had been quarantined because he had a communicable disease, and so maybe there would be no donkey this week. A woman who spoke with a Scottish accent was asking a prison employee what kinds of fruits they might find with which to bedeck the table for the Last Supper scene. Were there melons, she asked, looking for something large enough for spectators to see from a distance. But no, there were no melons. Grapes? No, no grapes. Apples and oranges, that was pretty much it. Apples and oranges, plus some bread. It was dawning on me as I stood there watching all this that the men working on the still emerging sets with tape measures, levels, hammers, and saws were not hired carpenters but inmates. The man standing next to me in the Texas Longhorns cap with the Nikon camera was an inmate. He was a reporter for the prison magazine, he told me, covering the same story I was covering. A man who happens to be the Son of God is betrayed, convicted, and sentenced to death. On the 3rd day, he rises from the grave to save the world with a message not of retribution, but of mercy.
Check, check. Yeah. I'm checking my mic right now. Yeah. A woman is a mother, a sister, a beauty or a queen. Let me tell you what a woman means. Living our life and our destiny for our families, our nation, and our community. Running the world or running the hood. A woman may not do all that she should. From Cardi B to Michelle Obama. I can be your lover or I can be your mama.
Sybil Fox Richardson, also known as Fox Rich. Department of Corrections number 387410.
Thais DeFillo, Department of Corrections number 553282.
Carrie Emerson, DOC number 453510. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this great book signing by a great author, Zachary Lazar. We are the women from the former prison known as LCIW. As you know, it was overtaken by the flood of 2016. But we are the fortunate ones because we graduated out. We are a small group of ladies who travel around the state of Louisiana, performing and telling our stories, what brought us there, and how we overcame. We are not the forgotten. Our past will not dictate my future or our future. We live each day much as you do, overcoming and enduring. But we become stronger sometimes by the obstacles that we bring ourselves to. We learn how to look past what was and walk boldly into where we are destined to go. Thank you for coming to partake of this small offering by Mr. Lazar and my group, the graduates.
As I said, I'd begun to lose track of what was happening almost as soon as Deborah parked her truck, and this sensation didn't stop. I was alone and began to wander, talking to more and more people on the edges of the action, writing down what they said, although little of it registered clearly. Deborah had told me to come without expectations, to not prepare, and it was true. I didn't need to prepare or even ask any questions beyond the most basic ones, but I didn't know what a burden of information was there waiting for me. I interviewed over 40 people over the course of that week, and what they told me filled up more than 90 pages of typewritten notes. After a while, I became an ear and an eye, nothing else. I found it impossible to go to the bathroom or even find a drink of water much at the time, because on my way to do either, I would be interrupted with another story. Imagine you're trapped in a barn, one man told me. Now imagine that the barn is on fire. You will do anything you can to get out of that barn. You will do anything you have to get out of that barn.
Why do women go to prison? Why do you think women go to prison, sir? How about drug addiction? What about you, ma'am? Why do you think women go to prison?
A lot of reasons.
A lot of reasons.
Good reasons.
Pick one, the first one that pops to your mind. Poverty. Mr. Lazar, why do you think women go to prison?
Oh, they go to prison for many reasons, but I think so many people I talked to went to prison because of violence in the world that they were in.
All of you guys gave wonderful answers. And that's true. There are several different reasons why women go to prison. Drug addiction, trying to make a way out of nowhere, following the wrong crowd. Most women go to prison for being mentally and emotionally unstable. home. I remember still, and it's no closure, the time in St. Gabriel got out in October of 2013. I went in at 23. My life was just beginning for me. College student, independent, got caught up with an armed robber. Now, I'm 34. 5 years in the school of the hard knocks, dealing with rules, obstacles, and many rocks. In spite of it all, things were looking up for me. I developed friendships, relationships. Nah, I had family, y'all. I remember waking up one morning inside of LCIW. It was my birthday. I didn't want to be bothered with anyone. I just wanted to stay inside my bunk all day and just rest. But something told me, Thais, get up, go outside and get some fresh air. To my surprise, as I stepped out on that yard, all my friends were outside. Man, we had board games. They had cards they had made for me. We had cookies. We had cupcakes. I'm not gonna tell y'all how we made those brownies. But they were really good. You see, my friends, they inspired me that day. Because inside of LCIW, it's not encouraged to celebrate birthdays. You wanna know why? Because it's considered inciting a riot. Yeah. So what actually turned out to be, what I thought was gonna be the worst day of my life, it actually turned out to be one of the best. Happy birthday to me. Happy birthday to me. My struggles, they weren't over. Money was always tight. See, when I came home, I moved from living with my sister to my boyfriend, and it was all right. I guess this is life's close-up. Penitentiary taught me stuff like how to be antisocial. So I went to church. Things were looking up for me until my mother's health. And then she left this earth. Damn, am I cursed? God, I'm sorry, but you're down bad. My understanding is gone. I'm just coming home, and now you're taking my heart and you left me alone? Emotions that were built up, it came out scattered. I started dropping people from my life as if they never mattered. But refusing to be the Mad Hatter, I had to switch up my focus. Battling a hurricane inside my cranium, vanity plus insecurities. Too many contradictions. Too many voices didn't allow me to listen, but I had to make the transition, and I had to flow with the seasons. But I became a slave to everyone, trying to appease them. Trying to stay ahead of the game because I fell so far behind. Everyone I see is headed for the finish line. But I'm that girl. I'm that girl putting in applications and I'm trying to stay focused. But every time my charges come up, they always say, you're not chosen. I hate being the tortoise when I used to be the hare. But no one cares. No one cares who you were before or your present state. Your whole existence is erased. All that shows up is felon. Well, who are you, Thais? I'm a writer. No, you're a felon. I'm an artist. No, you're a felon. I'm a teacher. No, you're a felon. I'm more than just a felon. I'm a young African American woman who deserves the right to be viewed as more than just a felon. I'm a teacher. I'm an artist. I'm a writer. I'm a musician. I'm an electrical technology student. That's just to name a few. I can be your nurse. I could be the next president if just given the opportunity. Doesn't everyone deserve to live out the desires and the dreams of their life? So what about me? What about me, y'all? So how would you guys cope if y'all was in this situation? I'm standing up here. I need feedback. I'm patient. So what about me? Am I forgotten? Caught up in bondage with nowhere to go. What about me? Am I forgotten? Caught up in bondage with nowhere to go. What about me? Am I forgotten? Caught up in bondage with nowhere to go.
I have such an easy job compared to everybody else. The day of the first performance was bleak. The sky the color of soot. The forecast predicting storms. There were maybe 150 of us in the audience, about 2/3 of whom were incarcerated people, watching in the cold as a line of actors and actresses in shepherd's robes took their places in the center of the arena. Their garments were sand-colored with rope belts and hoods that resembled those of desert saints in some early Renaissance painting. They began singing some minor key phrases, their voices dirge-like and plush, a sound of grief, and before they could finish the first verse, the sky erupted in a heavy rain that engulfed them. From my place in the grandstand, the downpour was like a white scrim, obscuring everything before me. Beneath the awning, out of the weather, an inmate was doing sign language to a group of fellow inmates who were deaf. The narrator was delivering a prologue, telling us that his name was Luke, that he was there to tell us the story of our dear Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, while across the aisle from me, a woman who must have been an inmate's mother held up a digital camera, as if by continuing to film the play, she could prevent it from being canceled. The singers' voices were beautiful, and they were beautiful in their beige and white biblical costumes, but the rain was so strong that you could hardly pay attention to anything else. The Virgin Mary hunkered in her salmon tunic as the Archangel Gabriel announced to her that she would soon have a miraculous child. Despite the rain, the actors were staying in character. It was what they were there to demonstrate, their ability to maintain self-discipline, but it seemed almost certain that they would have to call the play off in another minute or two. As if in response, the shepherds broke into full-fledged song, a gospel standard in a minor key called Mary, Did You Know? They had worked out the harmonies themselves, wide, surprising chords that flirted at the edges of atonality. Mary, did you know, the blind will see, the deaf will hear, the dead will live again. Their singing was almost casual in its flawlessness, even as the rain lashed down on them. The juxtaposition of those two facts seemed to suggest that this situation was not so different from any other day in their unluxurious lives. I saw the play many times, but in that first performance that began in the heavy rain, something happened that reason tells me was mere coincidence, but that the spirit of the day made seem uncanny. It was still raining. John the Baptist had just been charged with blasphemy, a mob had formed, and at the moment they were about to attack him, John looked up and saw Jesus approaching in the distance. It was his first entrance. Suddenly the rain stopped. It didn't wane, it ceased completely. It was implausible how tranquil the weather became the moment Jesus appeared. The sudden lull resulted in a chorus of bird song. So many birds started singing at once that you could barely hear Jesus' first words over the PA system. John baptized him in an artificial oasis. Then the actor playing Jesus did something I hadn't seen in rehearsals, so it surprised me. He pulled from beneath his green robe a live dove that he'd been hiding in his hand. When he released it, it flew out above the grandstand. All those singing birds, and then a live dove escaping from his robe.
Now we chose these words, won't bow down. It comes from the black masking Indians of New Orleans. It's a chant they sing that we won't bow down. Because we won't bow down to the structured box of mass incarceration. We refuse to be defined by our past. So at this time, I want to introduce to you, first of all, the literary genius of Mr. Zachary. Come on, put your hands together, Mr. Zachary. Mr. Zachary. Mr. Zachary, right? On the end, the lady who could be your president if only given a chance. Miss Thais DeFillo. The lady who asked the very question, how can I get my man back? The one that got away, Miss Fox Rich. Now we call her Miss Carrie and Mama Carrie, but she showed us tonight, don't be calling her no Mama Carrie. Mama Carrie, Miss Carrie. And my co-partner in crime that makes us do all kind of crazy stuff, Miss Kathy Randall. And last but certainly not least, I am the big queen. Big Queen of Settawa of the Washita Nation. And together we make a dynamic group called The Graduates. Now if you want to see more of this, we have a summit coming up April 6th through the 8th at the St. Charles Avenue Baptist Church, St. Charles Avenue Baptist Church, April 6th through the 8th, called Beyond Incarceration. Can you imagine a world beyond incarceration? Because the reality is this. When they get through locking up black men and black women, guess who they're coming for next? It's all of our problem that I believe that we can solve. I believe we have the energy. We don't want the title of being the most incarcerated place in the world. That's not what Louisiana deserves. We don't want that title. So if we have that title now, we should be leading the forefront or coming together, strategizing about how we can end mass incarceration. We thank you so much for your attention and your time. But more importantly, we want you to buy this man's book. Make sure you buy this man's book. And then after that, make sure you come to our summit, right? And tell somebody, because guess what? The summit is free. It's free. So thank you so much. Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. This was so beautiful. This was awesome.
Hey, thank you all for coming. There are books for sale, signs of them. And that's it. I guess if there are questions, we could probably do a little Q&A. I can't see you. I can't see anybody's faces because of these lights.
Hey, Zach. Antonio, hey.
Tony, you got a question?
Yeah, I heard a little bit on the radio that it was a combination of fiction and nonfiction, and I'm wondering what brought you to that, because I had how did you negotiate what's fiction, what's nonfiction?
Okay. So Antonio's asked a question about my book, which is a weird a mashup of fiction and nonfiction. There was a bunch of reasons for doing it that way. I wanted to write fiction because I wanted to write part of the book, at least from the point of view of someone who is in prison. I'm not. I wanted to write part of it as nonfiction because I felt like the reason that I was there in the first place is because of this strange coincidence that I have with Deborah Luster, the photographer, who's here. I thought that was essential to the story. Yeah, and on a kind of deeper level, maybe I think that my experience at Angola that week, the first week I was there, was a first-hand encounter, I think, with how fiction and nonfiction get mixed up in people's lives. Because if you're in prison, your life in a certain way is made of fiction, because you are no longer given your full complexity as a human being. You are the worst thing that you ever did. And so your past is kind of taken away from you, and that is a kind of fiction, I think. So thematically that made sense to me. But I had a lot to say in that book, so I wanted to use fiction and nonfiction, because I just couldn't get it all done without those things.
But you're cute over there.
Maurice.
So I heard you got some pushback on your title. What was the pushback and why did you choose the title?
Okay, that's a good question. A lot of people don't understand the title because it sounds like a karate movie or something where somebody's going to wreak vengeance against the system. To me, that title, Vengeance, is an ironic title, by which I mean that the whole book is a critique of vengeance as a concept. My father was murdered, so it might be natural for me to I kind of believe in vengeance as an ideal, actually. I write about this in the book a lot, though, and I've written about it before. I mean, you can't bring back the dead. My father was murdered when I was 6 years old. There was nothing I was going to be able to do to get revenge, so to speak. So I started to ask these questions, even when I was that young, which were questions of, why does something like that happen? What do you do with the information that you're not going to get revenge? And how do you go forward kind of living with that? And I think that I want the reader, when they finish that book, to say, holy crap, the book is called Vengeance. How fucked up is that? Because I think that people are human beings. I really do.
Do you know if the book was sent to Angola, do you know if it would be censored? Or like, can an inmate at Angola, like if I were to send this book to my client at Angola, would it be censored or would they be able to receive it? Do you know whether prisoners have been able to read your book?
It just came out, so I haven't tried to send it to anybody yet. My friend Quantos Wilson, who wrote a novel himself, he and I have exchanged novels, so he read this book before it was printed, manuscript. There are supposedly ways to send books to, Megan Holt actually runs an organization that sends books to prisoners.
But sometimes they censor books that are about prison.
Yes, in fact, I just sent Qantas, we were exchanging writing because that's what we do, and we were exchanging essays because I wrote an essay about him, and I said, well, why don't you write an essay in response to my essay? And we've been passing this stuff back and forth, and then I sent a essay by James Baldwin to him. It's like, well, here's something to check out. And it was confiscated. So, I still know what the answer to that is. I don't know why that was, but I'm getting to the bottom of that.
I suspect it would be arbitrary.
That's very likely, yeah. I'll almost say, yeah, Tom.
How did this specific collaboration come about? Who kind of started it and how did it evolve, maybe?
Thais. I remember kind of being nervous to ask Thais if she would want to do this. I finally called her up and I said, would you want to do this? And she said yes, and then I met everybody else. That was about, 3-4 weeks ago maybe. Maybe a month ago or something like that. And once I saw what they were doing, it just seemed like a really natural thing for us to do, because the first chapter of my book is a description of acting and a performance of a play, which is what they were doing, of course. And so it just seemed like something that would be good to do. And I just, for example, what I didn't foresee was the thing that we just did with me reading about Mary Bell, and then all of them saying, oh, here's what we think was going on there. That's talk about fiction and nonfiction, right? Thinking outside the box, yeah.
It was a great idea, and we're so grateful that you allowed us
Thank
to
you,
share the
folks.
stage with you on this spectacular night with the release of your book, and we wish that you sell, you know, like New York Times bestseller.
Me
Right
too.
here, right here.
Let's go get it.
Yes.
No doubt.
Are there any more questions?
Can I ask a question to the performer?
We
Yeah.
talked to.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
can talk.
what would it like to be in this performance and then have to go back to just your regular life at LCIW after having been in this big production?
Okay, well, honestly, going back into the prison after being outside, I can only imagine how some of the women who have been there for like 10, 20, 30 years, maybe that was their first time ever leaving the prison grounds. Going back into the prison after leaving, it was almost like going to prison all over again. For some Angola's, it's a prison, but for some reason it didn't feel as much as a prison as it did at LCIW. So we were treated. I don't want to have to watch what I say. We were treated differently at the male facility than we were at the female facility. And it wasn't because we were attractive females. Maybe that was part of the reason, but the majority, I really think that they saw us for women. They didn't look at us as offenders, the guards included. So it felt like we were leaving. We were so comfortable there and just having normal conversations. It was a sense of like a breath of fresh air, like getting back on that bus. When it was time to go, when we had to get shackled and handcuffed, it was so embarrassing. You know, the free people, the inmates, the workers, they're looking, and we got to back on the bus, and however long it took us to get back to St. Gabriel. It really just felt like I was getting sentenced all over again. And then it's just the certain security, like they already had it programmed in their mind that we were going over there for the wrong thing. No, we were so blessed. I felt so privileged to be chosen to go. You know, like, okay, the administration, it made me feel like the administration at LCIW looked at me as a human. That, okay, they actually trusted me to leave, you know, and to be around all this, these things that I had been stripped of, you know, so it was bittersweet. It was bittersweet.
I remember that moment when, at the end of each day, where you all would have to line up and be put in handcuffs and get on that bus. It was very intense. Yeah.
Comfortable ride. I don't know if y'all could just imagine just being like this on a bus. Just, I don't know.
I have a question. Can I follow up on that too? Because I saw the play also. And there was a scene, I guess it's at the end of the play, when all the performers, when you all gave us, the audience, the bread of life.
Yes.
And you all were running through the arena and filling us up. And it felt like this extraordinary thing that you all were doing for everyone who was there watching you and helping participate in that. And I would ask the same question, what that was like for you. I felt to me like you were giving us a gift.
It felt like as two parts, like as we gave you guys the bread of life, symbolically to me in that moment, it was like, here, we're giving you ourselves. We're out here as, we are technically inmates, but right now in this moment, we are, yeah, we're human. We are actors portraying the story of a guy who was murdered but who was forgiven. Like, so it's like, hey, we're Jesus. You know, in a sense, like here's our hearts, here's our source of humility, you know, Here's our life. Here's who we are. We're not the number that's behind our name. We're our name. You know? So that's how I felt symbolically. That's what it meant to me, giving you guys giving the audience the bread. There's a question. I see a hand in the back.
Thank you, dear. Like you mentioned the idea of incarceration, that in and of itself is a very difficult thing. I just wonder what our next step should be. I mean, we look at.
I can't really hear you. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Talk louder?
Yes, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. One of you mentioned the idea of incarceration as that being in and of itself an issue, and it is. But, you know, there are some things that are backed by evidence that talk about diversion and treatment and like real things that we can do to help people on their journey. And I just wonder what we can do as citizens to make that happen. I mean, it is, it's just unbelievable to me that we know what to do and don't do it.
What's your name?
We know.
Weta? Oh, that's beautiful. Weta, thank you so much for that question. I mean, what can you all as citizens do is, I think, the most important piece of the night, aside from this New York Times bestseller that we're here to celebrate tonight. The first thing that we've got to do is acknowledge where we are. Sometimes it's so hard. I have 6 sons, and you know, today I was really a cross bear. You know, I was really. Anybody say anything, I'm cutting all heads off. Don't move, don't breathe, don't say nothing. And so I had to go back and apologize, and sometimes accepting responsibility for how I know I have gotten us off course as a family. My ego just doesn't want to do, but it's time for white people in our society to step up and recognize what is going on and accept responsibility. What we're doing here is slavery. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Other industrialized nations do not run their prison system like America does. We love slavery, and that's why we are here. So the first thing is, thank you for your generosity. The first thing is accepting responsibility about what this really is about. The second thing is, we've got to go and let the old people out of prison. There was a man that went up for parole. He's 70 years old. He went to prison at 17. He's done 54 years and went up for parole, and they denied him. What are we doing with him? Nothing. 54 years since he was 17 years old. Stop it. Come on. There was an article in the newspaper the other day that said that a gentleman was multi-bill and he got sentenced to 40 years for his 3rd offense of marijuana. He got caught with two joints in New Orleans under Canna Zero. Under Canna Zero, who we would hope that I'm sure is a fine man. But how is he using our resources as a community when he sends someone to prison for 40 years for 2 joints? The first thing that we can do is that we can make sure that we let the old people go home. Geriatric parole is something that we are working for in the legislative session, this legislative session. This is my 3rd time bringing this bill up. And every time I bring the bill up that says that people who have done 20 years in prison, they're at least 45 years of age, hear from them again. It's not an automatic release. It's not ejecting them out of the door. It's hearing from them again to see if they are fit to return from us and get off of our state's budget and come home and be responsible members of our society, contributing to help do away with the delinquency because they can go back and reach our young people. Geriatric parole is coming up again this legislative session, and I would ask all of you, because when I ask your lawmakers, they say, oh, our citizens don't want that. They want people to stay in jail until they die, despite the fact that LSU released a study that said that people that have done 20 years and are 45 years old are less than 1% likely to recidivate. Now that's LSU. That's supposed to be the smart school right there, you know. So, and I know everybody don't go to college like me, but you know they say they know stuff over there at LSU, and that's what they said. So geriatric parole is one of the first pieces that we need to work on. The second piece is the habitual offender bill. You asked the question, I got to tell you the truth about it, right? And with the habitual offender bill, it says that no matter what crime, and listen, I understand, I voted for the habitual offender bill. I came home under Bill Clinton. I said, yes, I read on the ballot, I am a chronic voter. I read on the ballot, they say, should people that have committed 3 felonies be sentenced more harshly? And I said, hell yeah. And then about 4 years later, I was sitting in the courtroom and I watched how they used the multiple offender bill, the habitual offender bill. One of the young ladies that was one of our former graduates, her name is Rhonda Oliver. And Rhonda tells her story about how she, for stealing a $175 toaster, because it was her 3rd time getting caught with theft, that the district attorney sentenced her to 20 years in prison for habitually being offended. The sentence originally wasn't supposed to be more than 1 to 4 years maximum. They sentenced her to 20 years. After she began writing her matter, addressing her matter and her sentence in the court, 5th Circuit Court of Appeals, the clerk of courts for the 5th Circuit Court of Appeals that she had been sending her information over to, because she was her own lawyer, because she was from a poor family, had lost her mother and father early, had taken in her sister's children who also died. Not why was she stealing, just lock her up for life because she's stealing. The guy over in the 5th Circuit Clerk of Courts committed suicide, sent a letter, a suicide note, saying that they had been throwing away the paperwork for people who were incarcerated and filing for appeals if they did not have a lawyer. They had been throwing them away. He said in his letter that they published in a newspaper that he couldn't take it anymore, so he killed himself in his office at the 5th Circuit Court. Because somebody told her that happened, that they read it in the newspaper, she was able then to appeal, and after 14 years, Rhonda came home 2 years ago. The habitual offender bill has got to go. And finally, my last one, the death penalty. We too broke of a doggone state to be talking about putting people to death when it costs too much money, and we not putting nobody to death no doggone way. The death penalty is the 3rd thing we need to do away with. I'm sorry, y'all know I'm a mic hog. My bad. My bad. I'm just saying, you asked the question. I was just trying to give you,
That's all right.
I won't keep you long. She said all of that, but the bottom line of it is, get involved. You may not know where you want to go, how you want to be involved, but there are all kind of different ways to do that. Find out the thing that you are most passionate about and get involved in that. You don't always have to be a leader, but be one that put hands in that help to get it accomplished. Get involved.
And come to our summit, April 6th through 8th. We've got flyers. Okay, let's give it, I think we're finished, aren't we? Please give it up for Zach Lazar. The Garden District Bookstore.
Yes, and let's give it up to the graduates one more time. Thank you, everybody. Thanks so much.